It's time for us to argue because we're going over commander cards we disagree on.
I'm Mia, and I know that fall is soup season.
I'm BZ. I own 253 copies of the Magic card Woodland Wanderer, and we're the Nitpicking Nerds, sponsored by Card Kingdom, the best place to go to buy Magic cards. If you want everything delivered at once at a reasonable time frame for a reasonable price, Card Kingdom is your only option.
They have everything, singles, doubles, triples, sealed product, a sale page, a little bit of everything. So go check them out and use our link to tell them we sent you and to see our faces on their website. We're also sponsored by Moxville, but not now, a lot later, or maybe a little bit later. Who knows? You don't, and neither do we.
And Patreon is where you could go to see more content from us. We just recorded a game with Bobby, Christine, and Mental Misplay that's up there, and we just did a common and uncommon set review of Duskmorn, both things you cannot find on YouTube, so go over there and tip us a few dollars if you like what you see. Next up, Dragon Shield, best sleeves in the multiverse.
Good sleeves.
They have a website that we want you to go to because if you use our link,
Nerds,
and our special code,
Nerds,
you can save 5% of the money that you worked hard to earn so that you could spend on Magic cards.
They have everything, including these new Halloween sleeves that are super awesome art sleeve. They can protect your cards. Go check them out and use our code
Nerds.
There we go. So, BZ and I usually build very similar decks in terms of like very mid-rangey, lots of removal, you know, a couple splashy cards, and mostly just a lot of lands that we really like. But there are some cards that we disagree on. Today we have 16 that we're going to battle on, and you should tell us in the comments who you think is right and who you think won overall.
Yeah, and obviously it's going to be me, but you know, give Mia a few, soften the blow a little bit, but I plan on coming out on top. The first card we're going to go to is a card that you disagree with me on, so I'll let you read it.
The card is Roadside Reliquary. It is a land, and you can tap it to add colorless, or if you pay 2 and tap it and sack it, you draw a card if you control an artifact, and you draw a card if you control an enchantment.
What's wrong with this guy?
I don't love this card. I do like the fact that it doesn't come in tapped, and I do like the fact that it taps for colorless. However, I'm not a really big fan of sacrificing my lands for card draw. I'd really rather be playing things in terms of like War Room and that sort, or like Mina's Tirith and that sort of thing. So, and I also don't play enchantments probably as much as you do. So to me, this reads for the most part 2, tap it, sack it. So that's already 3 mana, getting rid of a land basically permanently. Draw 1 card on the off chance that I have an artifact. If it's like, if I haven't spent my treasure or something, or if like, you know, or if I just happen to have an enchantment around. And that is not often enough for me to really want to play this card.
Don't you like the Horizon lands, like the Nurturing Peatland and stuff?
I do, but that's not 3 mana to tap in second. It also taps for colors, and usually colors and pips are the things that I am looking forward to be putting in my land base the most. Because
the thing I'm doing with Reliquary is I'm playing it in 1 and 2 color decks for sure. I think it's like a staple of 1 and 2 color budget decks. I love it as a budget card. Most of my decks tend to have some mana rocks or whatever laying around, and then like 4 to 7 enchantments just lurking around. And then if I can get a divination off my land for the same cost, you know, a quick study, if you will, if I can just cast quick study off of my colorless land in the late game, I'm pretty happy about it.
I am just not a fan of sacrificing my own lands for the most part, unless it's very cheap to do it to cycle them.
I mean,
like
I'm not doing it on
Abbey's.
turn 3. You know, you're doing it at the late game where you get to have some like when you're out of gas.
I'm trying to win before then. Also, with War Room, I think that since it's coming down in price, it keeps getting reprinted in precons and that sort. I think it's like maybe sub $1 or $1.50. So when I do have the budget in decks that really need it and they're 1 or 2 colors, I will be putting in more basics to tap for my colors, and then also putting things in like War Room so I could get that effect repeatedly and also unconditionally.
I'm cool to crack this in the late game. Mia's not about it, so let us know. This is where it begins. Let us know. I'm sure we'll only BM each other more as this episode goes on. Next up is a card that I disagree with Mia in. It's in a specific context. It's Balagate Recovery, which is normally a great card. It's 2 and green for a sorcery. Returns a target card from your graveyard to your hand, and it's an MDFC, so it's a tapped green land on the backside. But I saw this in one of your 5-color decks. You have this in Ramos, and I don't think I would play this card in a 5-color deck.
That is fair. However, the point of that deck is to churn out door to nothingness activations and kill people 1 by 1. However, door to nothingness is target opponent loses the game, and I have to get through 3 opponents. So having a lot of like graveyard recursion is really important for that. I'm playing things like Eternal Witness, and I think Timeless Witness, and also this. I just group it into one of those where it's like return target card to my hand from the graveyard, because I just need so much of that, and I don't want to be keeping up too much like brought back, because that's so conditional, and also double pips on like while keeping it up as an instant is a little bit tough. I just think that overall, it's also very nice because I can get back any card. It's not, or like any.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a door.
Yeah, so I don't have to get back that. I can get back other things if I find I need another removal spell or something. So in general, I think that this, even though it's only going to be a green land on the backside, its casting cost makes it a little bit easier to cast because I'm trying to have a lot of green for early ramp in that deck to begin with. And then I'm not thinking of it as a land most. I'm thinking about it closer to like a Noxious Revival that can also be played as a land.
Or like a regrowth.
Yes.
For like one more mana. I guess where we disagree on that deck is getting back door to nothingness. I'm not going to question playing that as a win con because that's cool and that's what you want to do as to start. Like that's the thesis of the deck. Isn't it just easier to like copy the trigger? Because when you get it back with Balagad, you've got to spend another 18 mana to kill someone, right?
Yeah, I think so. However, I don't know. I feel like door is such a telegraphed win con because it comes in tapped for one, which is already really tough.
A problem.
And I think that copying triggers, I do have a couple versions of that. I think I have like Strionic Resonator and stuff and rings maybe, but I feel like those are also win more cards, and that if I can't keep the door out because it gets destroyed by an Abrade or something, I need more ways to get it back because it already sacrifices itself, and then if people blow it up, I need ways to get it back. So just keeping it on the field a lot of times, because people, really hate target opponent loses the game, keeping it on the field is really the tough part, whether I'm sacking it or someone else is blowing it up.
Yeah, I guess I wonder if there's a better option. I don't exactly have one right now. That doesn't mean, Mia should win this category. I think it's real rough in 5-color. Maybe you'd be better off. Like, how often do you play the green land, like the green side? Like, almost never?
Almost never, honestly. But I do like having the option because when it comes to green lands in general, I have a bunch of green-based ramp in there because, you could do anything with 5 colors, and I have a bunch of Triumphs. So when I'm looking for something that's like Nature's Lore, or find a target forest, I'm usually finding a Triumph. I need a green land early. It's nice to have a green source that it can do if I draw it in my opening hand or first card of the game.
I guess my argument is, seems stinky.
Oh, well, you've never played Door to Nothingness. It's a tough win con.
I don't think I would be trying to get it back. I guess if it gets destroyed, but you kind of don't, because you got to untap it so they could respond and blow it up. And then if that happens, you really want to get it back. It feels like there's a better way.
I also want to point out that in this deck to begin with, I had Approach of the Second Sun as an alternate win con. And BZ went, well, that's not thematic. Why don't you go put something else in there? I mean, it's a Door to Nothingness deck. Why don't you put something else? So I put more ways to get the door back.
You 1-for-1 the Balagad for the Approach.
Basically, I put more ways to get the door back.
Look, this isn't part of the disagreement, but I feel like I'm not alone. Where if somebody says this is my Door to Nothingness deck and they kill me with Approach of the Second Sun, I'm going to have a bad taste in my mouth.
That's fair. However, if you're telling me to focus on the Door to Nothingness deck and win with the door, and then I put more ways to win with the door, I don't know what you're complaining about.
I think there's a better way. It feels like there's one of those like black and white grayscale images like in the infomercials where somebody's like fumbling around with all the things falling out of their cabinet. I feel like it's like that.
When the door comes out, it is a removal target. Sometimes it gets countered a lot too.
It could.
And you know where that goes? It goes straight to the graveyard where I'm going to have to get it back from later because I don't really have another win con in that deck because somebody told me to build around my win con.
All right, why don't you take another shot at me as a refresher then? Let's do the next one.
The next one we have is most Planeswalkers. This is including Garruk, Primal Hunger, and Xenaghost the Reveler in his Fella deck alone. I don't really like Planeswalkers. I think that's kind of a well-known thing on this channel. I think Planeswalkers are closer to glorified sorceries. It's very easy to get the trigger of them once. However, if they're not something like Teferi, Master of Time, or something where it's like you can activate them multiple times, or they're passively getting things like Lolith or Liliana Dreadhorde General, I think that it's closer to you get the effect once and then it might die if it's too scary by, things not only from removal of things like target permanent or target Planeswalker or getting swept up in big board wipes. It can also just die by your opponent swinging into it, which is just like another layer of not being secure. I think that you're stuck on the 1v1 Magic phase, and that I think that they're awesome in 1v1, but they don't translate to Commander that well.
Well, I don't even like Planeswalkers that much. That's why I was surprised to see that you put most Planeswalkers, because I was like, I feel like I play less Planeswalkers than the average person, and it's really telling me how much you don't like Planeswalkers, because I think, for me, there's like this inner circle of like 10 to 15 Planeswalkers that have, to me, proven themselves to be either good enough to stick around or good enough for one activation. So like oftentimes Xenagos can be a big ritual. And then after that, it's like, well, I made 10 mana. Who cares what happens? Or Garruk might be 5 mana, draw equal to your biggest power, which is maybe 5 or 6, which I think is reasonable. And that's like, oh, okay, in a budget area, these are both in a budget deck. I feel like that's not too shabby, where if you can play the Planeswalker, get your card back, get advantage somehow. If it's like Ob Nixilis Reignited and you +1 to draw a card and then he dies, I think that card's trash. And I think a lot of Planeswalkers fall into that sort of category. But for me, at least, I've got an inner circle of workhorses that are better than the average Planeswalker. So while I don't like most of them, give me my Garruks and my Xenagoses and my Lilianas and my Teferis all day. Oko, Dak Faden.
I mean, maybe you're just spoiled because sometimes people don't attack them and they really, really should. Maybe you're a little bit spoiled by that. But I think that certain ones like Lolith or like, Liliana, as I mentioned earlier, they're just like accumulating value, and also people they have things to protect them built in.
True.
Which is really nice, but then also they aren't they're basically unkillable because of the fact that you're getting so much advantage from them to begin with. So either people they're not I win the game buttons on a stick, but then people might try and kill them, but Teferi will phase something out, and then you'll also be drawing and discarding. So I think those are fine, but these kind of seem lackluster, let's say, and they also don't really play too much into the theme of where you have it, at least Svella. If
big mana, big boys.
I mean, big mana, yes, but also you have a lot of untapped synergies with creatures and stuff. I would probably be putting things that untap and tap for mana or something instead of just Planeswalkers where you're not really taking advantage of that. This is not to say that you shouldn't be playing Super Friends or something. If you have a Super Friends deck, this
totally different.
Yeah, this goes out the window. This is just talking about things that are not Super Friends.
I like to play. Maybe my average number of Planeswalkers in a deck is 0.75. Where I'm playing almost a full Planeswalker in every deck, but you've got your average is 0.2.
Yeah.
Maybe you have 2 Planeswalkers in all of your decks or something.
I think that is correct.
There are also tiers. I think Teferi Master of Time, Liliana Dreadhorde, Oko, Dak Faden, they're tier 1. Maybe even 8 mana Ugin. They're really good Planeswalkers. And I definitely have Garruk, Primal Hunter, and Xenagos in the tier 2. But I think if you're in a budget, I think they are acceptable. And I will stand by that. And move to my next card, which I have never really seen be that good. It's Wild Magic Surge. It's red for an instant. Destroy target permanent and opponent controls. And then they flip till they hit a permanent of the same type. Or no, they flip till they reveal a permanent that shares a card type, which I was right the first time. And then they put that card out of the battlefield and the rest on the bottom in a random order. I feel like I can say this more now because you're a player who wants security more than me. If you're a red deck like mono red, you are bothered by the fact that you can't answer enchantments theoretically if one were to come up that nobody else wants to answer, and it would also impact your game plan in such a negative way that you might lose because of it. I don't care, and I'm just going to play all the efficient stuff for the most part. Maybe a Chaos Warp because it is pretty versatile, but this falls into the security. You just want to feel secure, even if you're never going to hit an enchantment with this.
I just won a game with this card while we were at Gamers Guild, actually.
But then was it on an enchantment?
Yes.
You hit an enchantment?
Yes. I was playing against a Yuriko deck, and they had an enchantment to make everything, unblockable and, basically what I did is I held this up to the last second because I was at 2 or 3 life. I hit it, and then they flip until they get another enchantment, which obviously Yuriko decks aren't playing that many, and they hit something like Fortune Teller's Talent or something like that. It was just a 2 mana do nothing enchantment, and because of that, I was able to block all their stuff and win the game.
'Tis merely one anecdote in a sea of mediocrity.
I think that I'm playing this in Perforos for one, and it's mono red, and you don't have that many options. I think Chaos Warp is really good. I think Wild Magic Surge is okay. Also, it's, destroy target permanent and opponent controls. I think that is a very wide range. If they have a troublesome land, it's more likely than not that if you're hitting a Cabal Coffers or Field of the Dead or something, they will more likely hit something that is less troublesome than either of those lands. They might just hit a basic or, a tap land or just a normal duel with nothing else on it. Or
it is true, they will hit something less relevant than whatever you kill, because not all spells are created equal. It's like Arcane Denial, letting them draw 2 cards. It's sure, because the thing I'm countering is worth 2 cards. But in this case, they are always going to hit something. So you're never going to, it's never destroy it straight up. With Chaos Warp, they can reveal a sorcery and then they don't get anything off of it. That definitely happens a decent chunk of the time. Or they hit a land when you got rid of a creature or when you got rid of some enchantment that was a lot of mana. So I don't love giving them something every time. It kind of feels like a Path to Exile-y type thing, but then...
Do you not like Path to Exile?
But the card could be way better than a land, It's like Path... This is always going to give them a land bare minimum.
I don't know. I'm saving this for, I don't like to use removal too much, except for if it's affecting me. So I think of removal closer to, a last hurrah. At least I categorize them in two categories. This is last hurrah, and then there's also ones that are proactive. You're using certain ones on the heuristic study, and then this is what I consider the last hurrah, where it's
break glass in case of emergency.
Yes, and so because of this, I'm usually only doing it if I'm going to lose, and I won't do it proactively for anybody else. But because of that, usually when I'm firing this off at a permanent, there's very little that can hit where I will be worried, because at that point I'm either flipping something that is better for me than that, or I'm just losing, which I was already going to be doing anyways.
I think this one comes down to, do you think Wild Magic Surge is a good Magic card? I don't think it's that great, personally.
I think it's okay. I think it's serviceable, especially if you're in mono red.
All right, next up, another mono red card, but this time you have a problem with me playing it.
It's End the Festivities. You guys might have heard of this one. It's red for a sorcery. It deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control.
Hey, I'm going to preempt this. This started out as a meme where I was kept seeing these stupid mana dorks in these early game plays, and I'm like, guys, End the Festivities is the best version of this effect that we've ever seen. I'm gonna try it out. And to my surprise, it's not a busted card. It's been okay. And for something that started out as a meme, I'm pretty happy about it. I think it is solidly okay. Don't get it twisted. I'm not playing this in the guy who's like the Keller Morph. I'm not playing it in that. There's no synergy. Either it's like a spells deck, an instant or sorceries deck that's like, oh cool, this is an instant or sorcery, or it's like a mid-range deck that plays a lot of board wipes. And I think in those it's been okay.
I think that there's two options for this. It's either the Valgavoth type decks where you're like, okay, I have to deal 1 damage, or the Obnixilis ones are I have to deal 1 damage to everyone specifically.
Not that.
Or you are just trying to get your storm count up because it's so cheap and it does a little bit of nothing for 1 red.
I have a little bit of that. Yeah. There's a storm deck.
But even there, I don't know. I feel I'd rather be playing little other things for a single red. Maybe is Flick a Coin or is that 2 in a red?
I don't know. 2 in a red.
Okay, I just think that there's better things for single red, even if you want to do a couple combat checks,
you
depending on what you're
playing.
Bolt? Yeah, I don't know. I think End the Festivities is so whatever. I think it's a very okay card, as BZ mentioned. However, I wouldn't play it.
I think it's adorable. Sometimes you snipe a few mana dorks and you just crush somebody's spirits. It's not the worst card because at least it's not dead in your hand. You can just fire it off, sweep away a couple tokens. There's not many boards where this doesn't hit anything. So you can fire it off. It does deal 1 to them for if that matters for you. I think End the Festivities is cute and pretty cool.
I think it's so whatever. I think it's so replaceable, except for if you actually want to deal 1 specifically to people.
Okay, next up, my turn. We got Guafa Hazid, Profiteer. This is in Mia's Nekusar plus white deck that's forcing everybody to draw. This is 1 blue white for a 2/2. You can pay white and blue and tap it to put a bribery counter on a creature you don't control, and its controller draws a card, and creatures with bribery counters on them can't attack or block. I do want to acknowledge, I understand the context here. We are talking about this in a deck where you do want opponents to draw cards. So it's not I think Guafa Hazid is bad because it gives away cards. I think it's just bad everywhere. I think even in that deck, it's too slow, and we don't care enough about the attacking or blocking part.
I have been a little bit on the fence about this card. I don't think it's the worst. I think it's a little slow. I will agree with that. However, with that deck, I don't run that many creatures, and a lot of the creatures I do not want to be blocking with, so I'm very susceptible to attacks. And there's a lot of points where I'm not running any propaganda type effects or ghostly prisons. So a few of my creatures are either very utility. Those are my shield drids and my fate unravelers, and I don't want to be blocking with those. Or I just have my commanders out and they die to removal, obviously, but they die to removal very fast because the Ishai that's 21/21, because everyone keeps ballbling BZ at the table, that's swinging in for commander damage, that is gigantic, and that's a death threat on a stick.
I would say Ishai dies to End the Festivities, but she really doesn't.
No, don't.
Almost.
But with this, I think it's a little bit political because it's if I don't have any card draw engine hurting things like Fate Unraveler, it's hey, don't attack me or else I'll ice it down. But I mean, you get a card at least, and people don't get as mad about that as they probably really should. But in general, it's kind of a last hurrah. Or not a last
ditch.
Not a last ditch, but I feel it's not a last ditch in the slightest. It's closer to preemptive because if I'm worried, if someone says like, hey, will you not attack me with that? Like, I can help you draw cards, and like I have a couple of target things. It's like, opponents like draw a card or whatever, and they're like, no. Well, I go, well, okay, well, you can't attack me to begin with, or if you won't make that trade with me, I will force that trade where you will get a card and you will also not attack or block my stuff.
Here's the only context where I'm discovering that I like Guafa Hazid. If you put it into your deck, this has to be something that you decide on privately and that nobody knows about. If you just put it in your deck as a 3-mana 2/2, exclusively to threaten people with the ability when you have no intention of ever activating it, that might be where it gets the most value. But like if you're actually spending 2 mana a turn to do this, I feel like you're just gonna lose the game.
I'm never doing it per turn. It's closer to like a don't touch me, and also it's a way to get people to draw cards if I really need it.
I want to start calling the bluff, and you're not gonna want to pay the 2.
I don't want to pay the 2 for the most part. However, with that deck, drawing cards, like even 1 or 2 cards eking out of someone, is very valuable to me because that
it hurts them.
Yeah, because that could be the difference between a couple life. That could be the difference of a treasure token with Smothering Tithe. It could be a lot of things. It's also just stapled on there. It's just upside, and it's repeatable too. So.
All right, hit me with your best shot on the next one.
The next one is True Conviction. It's 3 white for an enchantment. Creatures you control have double strike and lifelink. I think this is very Winmore. This thinks that you have creatures on the field and enough of them for it to matter, where you're casting 6 mana worth of a spell to give them double strike and lifelink. I think that's just like very Winmore because it's like it just assumes too much of you. If I have 1 or 2 creatures out, I don't want to cast this. At best, it's like what, 8 or something if they're 4/4s, where this is in God Eternal Oketra, where a lot of the things that come out are 4/4s. I don't want to spend 6 mana on that, and if I don't have a board, this sucks.
All right, here's where I'm at with this. Obviously, everybody agrees that overruns are good, and we play overruns, even though when we don't have creatures, they're not that good. They kind of suck, and they're dead in our opening hands. This is a white overrun that lacks a little bit in terms of like damage output, because if you have a bunch of 1/1s, they're only going to deal 2 instead of 1, but then it makes up for that a little bit with how much life I'm gaining. So if this was overrun, it would give +3/+3. I would attack you with my 1/1 and you take 4 damage. Instead of that, I'm attacking you with my 1/1, you take 2 damage and I gain 2. So it's like a similar life point swing, and then obviously the bigger the creatures get, the more excited I am to have it happen. I do try to make a lot of 4/4s in that deck, but I like this card in general. I think it can do things in the non-combo metas where combat damage and life totals actually do matter. Throwing out 30 double strike lifelink and then just not worrying about the crackback, pretty sweet. And unlike an overrun, this is a permanent, so it just stays in play.
I think the thing that people like the most about overruns, though, is the evasion or getting through damage with, like, trample and stuff. I think that's the biggest draw to them, because if you have a board of 1/1s or even 4/4s and they have a bunch of 1/1s to block, the point is that you're getting damage through still with trample. In this deck, I also don't think you've put Moonshaker Cavalry, but you have this. So my question is, if you want to get through damage and you want to end the game, why is this what you pick when you can pick something that actually gives your creature some evasion?
Now, maybe I should have Moonshaker Cavalry in that deck. That might be true. However, it is definitely true that Moonshaker Cavalry is more lame than True Conviction.
I guess.
It's a little bit more lame. So I'm going to have to make that decision. I don't know if this is a 1-for-1 trade that I'm going to like swap out the True Conviction for Moonshaker. Maybe I put Moonshaker in as well. How sweet are they together? Am I right? That's not win more. That's just enough win.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of mana that you're spending, though.
The card's really cool, guys. It's really, really cool. Oh, we're going to go to the next one. It's Creeping Bloodsucker. Mia has this in a couple different decks, actually.
Yes, I do.
It's 1 and a black for a 1/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you gain life equal to the damage dealt this way. Basically, an extort trigger on your upkeep. And I am not sold on this card at all. I think this card is stinky. I think waiting for this and the slow burn and the lack of multiple trigger potential, I just never want to play this card.
I think this card is fine. I think that I play it in Edgar, which wants a lot of cheap vampires to begin with. Mm-hmm. And I also play it in Sorin of House Markov, which requires you to flip him when you gain 3 or more life. That has this very easily. People are not going to be removing this. It has a couple early blocks if people try to swing at you with 1/1s in the early game. And just overall, I think that if you can give it lifelink, that's really awesome, because you're just getting like double the life at that point. And it's just a very passive way to be able to deal damage, gain life, and just it just kind of sits in play. And then also with Edgar, it has that effect. Plus, it also comes with just a 1/1. It's a
everything
2-for-1.
comes with a 1/1
Yeah.
Edgar. You could throw a 2-mana.
But like that's why we're throwing in multiple 2-mana, 1-mana vampires, right? Because we just want as many of them as possible.
I don't think the well is deep enough for me to want to go to Creeping Bloodsucker. There's only a few 1-drop vampires, and you probably want every version of those, even if their text box is kind of irrelevant, because 1 mana for 2 1/1s plus a tiny bit extra is pretty sweet. But like when we're at 2 mana, I feel like this is pretty close to blank. I do like extort cards. I like the 3 life and they lose 1, that kind of thing. When I can do it multiple times, or when it's whenever you do this, zap them for a little bit. Or, like I don't think Zulaport Cutthroat's bad because I can trigger that multiple times, but ever upkeep, I just feel like it's too slow. It feels like the Phyrexian Arena of extort.
I think he's perfectly fine, and I also think that in Sorin he's a little bit more relevant because of the fact that I need exactly 3.
But Sorin has extort, so all you have to do is cast any spell.
Yeah, but this comes down like before that, so I will also passively get it without spending more mana, and if he has extort, I'm going to have to chain together a bunch of other spells and I'll be gaining more life. I don't know. I think he's been fine from what I've seen. Maybe there will be better cards to reprint, and I'm not like attached, but I think he's fine.
I think he's lame, and I want you at home to agree with me. All right, next up, Mia, let's hit it.
This card is so whatever. I don't know why BZ plays it. It's Journey to Eternity.
Wow.
1 green black for an enchantment, and you enchant a creature you control. When it dies, you return it to the battlefield under your control. Then you return Journey to Eternity flipped under your control, and it turns into a land that you can tap for 1 mana of any color, or you pay 3 green black, tap it, which is 6 mana total, to return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
This card is so good. It's sick.
I don't know. I think that we are not playing things like Fake Your Own Death and like besides the one that is the Malakir.
Right, I agree with that. We can agree there.
Yeah, we are not playing things that bring creatures back when they die for the most part.
Totally.
This is a more expensive one-time version of that will also pay 6 to get a creature back from the graveyard. I don't think that that's very good, and I just think that those rates are very bad no matter which side you're putting, and then also getting to tap it as a land is not that threat. I don't think this card is that threatening overall, and I've played against it a lot in his Beladros deck. It's okay, like it's perfectly fine, but I feel like if you have 6 mana, you can be doing more than just returning a single target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. I think you can be doing a lot more with that.
If there was a land that said entered untapped, tap for 1 mana of any color, and you pay 5 mana and tap it to reanimate a creature, that land would be insanely good. And I look at this like, yes, it is that, proactive sort of, not dead after all, whatever version of that effect. It is that proactive thing. There is a chance, since it is an aura, for you to get blown out a little bit. But it's a 3-mana investment, so I don't think it's like tap 8 mana, sorcery speed, telegraph type thing as bad. So you play for 3 mana. So what you get is you get not dead after all. You get to return your creature for extra ATBs or death triggers, whatever. You also get this really sick land that doesn't really even have a card that's analogous to it because it's just a sick effect. We don't have any reanimate lands on creatures at all. Closest we have is maybe Volrath's Stronghold. This has been sick for me. I have dominated games where I have some big threat and I just leave my mana up because I know that even if they kill it, I just go, all right, here it is again. It's actually extra silly with Beladros because you can reanimate something, even Beladros, then activate them to untap it and get another reanimation. I think if it was like, here's a weird cultivate. You got to sacrifice a creature and then you go get a great land in play. It's ramp and you get a little bit of extra triggers.
I think that the deal is that the land might be fine if I had 0 casting costs. However, I think the appeal for not dead after alls is the fact that they're instants and they're surprises, and this is not a surprise in the slightest.
What if I changed it? Would you play Wood Elves if it got this land?
For free?
Yeah, it's a 3-mana sorcery speed investment that gets you a land in play. As long as you have another little proactive way to sacrifice.
Yeah, it's like this relies on so much. You have to proactively be able to sacrifice the creature. You need a creature that you're okay with sacrificing, and then you need enough mana and creature cards in your graveyard that you want to bring back. And I feel like if you have that entire jumble of things, then you could just be doing more with your mana. 9 mana total to bring a creature back.
I agree with most of what you're saying, except it's not a creature you're okay with dying. It doesn't have. It could be literally any creature. It doesn't matter. If it's a crappy creature with no ETB, you still get the ramp spell out of it. You still get to get your awesome land back, and then have a threat in the land slot later.
I don't know. I think that this is so whatever. I think the amount of mana you need to pour into it for the effect of the land to actually be relevant, and then the effect of a telegraphed not dead after all is so mediocre.
So sick. This card's great. I know this is not like in the best green-black reanimator graveyard decks. This does not go in the tier 1, borderline C80H high power stuff. Anything else, mid-power, this card slaps. It's freaking cool. Next up is my turn. Quicksmith Genius is a card Mia actually plays in multiple decks as well. I think of this as a Mia card because I've never really even tried to play it. It's 2 and a red for a 3/2. Whenever an artifact you control enters, you can discard and draw a card. Seems fine. I don't know. I just don't think it's that good of a card.
I think it's so fine. I think that it's when I'm making a lot of artifacts, they're usually treasures or things that can tap for mana. And because of that, lands are completely dead in my hand. So if I am getting artifacts on the field, I'm usually cycling out lands to be able to draw cards and then get to the heat. And lands are just really clogging up my hand for the most part. So this is in Roxanne. This is in Baloth. I think those are the 2 where I have it. I might have it in a 3rd place. But overall, it's just I'm making mana. I don't need so many lands. I'm trying to get to spells I can cast.
I think that's where this comes in too, because Baloth, Baratul, who makes a lot of treasures when goaded creatures die, and Roxanne, who can make treasures, which is what the deck does, and she makes meteorites. I don't think that's enough of reasons to play Quicksmith Genius. I would want to be in some kind of 30 artifact deck, or where my commander makes tokens or something at a more controllable rate than what Baloth and Roxanne do. I don't know. I just think this guy's so schmedium.
Yeah, I haven't seen him too much in those decks, actually, so I have not too much testing with him, but I think that in theory it works pretty well. And then also when you have things that are instant speed, you're not inspired drinking, the Pirate's Pillage, all of those, you're making.
That's the best case scenario, Pirate's Pillage giving you discard 4, draw 2, and then draw 2, that's to me not enough.
Look, I'm just churning through my deck at those points, and then also with Baloth, things are dying kind of left and right anyways, because a lot of things end up being goaded, and so there's multiple triggers from that.
Yeah, Quicksmith Genius, I think that one's more of a sideline card, maybe a really tight budget for me. I know
those are both budget decks.
They are, but even still, I look at them and I go.
And I am already pushing the budget on both of those decks.
Not scared of that card.
But the next one is a BZ card.
Good luck. You can pry this one out of my cold, dead hands.
I think it's so fine. It's so not... I don't think it's bad, but I don't think it's that impressive either.
I'm catching a W on this one.
It's tribute to Hirobi, or as we call it, Rat Jam. 1 and a black for an enchantment saga that says modes 1 and 2, each opponent creates a 1/1 black rat rogue creature token. If you get to Saga 3, you exile it and return it to the battlefield transformed as Echoes of Death's Wail, 3/3 flying haste. When it enters, you gain control of all the rats that you made. Whenever it attacks, you can sack another creature. If you do, draw a card. I think this lacks because there is the point where everybody is going, all the opponents, by the way, not you, is going to be making a rat. And so you can swing all the rats into each other, which is what I've seen almost 100% of the time. The only time I've seen BZ profit with rats on this is if we've been playing 5-player games and there have been rats that couldn't swing into one another. But every single time I've just said, you want to swing all the rats into it? It goes to 6 total. That's a perfect amount just to clash into one another. Everyone goes, yeah, you know what? Sure. And then we do. And then BZ gets a 3/3 on the back after waiting 3 turns.
This card, I think, is pretty good. And here's my slam dunk counter to what you're saying. If you have to engage in some sort of long-standing speech on how to answer this card through cooperation amongst 3 people over 3 turns, and it's a 2-drop that gives away some stupid rats, I feel like I'm getting value out of that, especially when at the end of the day, I still get a 3/3 flying haste that can draw me cards. You don't have to sacrifice a rat. You can draw off other stuff. And in certain situations, if there's Blood Artists or, Massacre Rooms in play, I throw down Rat Jam, Hirobi, because it forces the rats to jam. That's why we call it Rat Jam. And I'm profiting no matter what you do, even if you guys try to team up and kill all the rats.
I think Blood Artist is best case scenario, and it's not a big-winded speech. It's just, hey, you want to make him spend 2 mana to do nothing?
Well, it's okay. Well, first, I give away 3 rat tokens. So player A has to attack player B, and they trade off rats, leaving player C with an additional rat. Next turn, everybody gets a rat. Now players A and B have 1 rat. Player C has 2 rats. Now players A and B attack player C. Player C trades off both times, and it's like you have to explain that that's how it works every time. And
it's counting.
I'm
what
just
do you
like,
mean?
guys, it's fine. Just let me have a couple rats. And if you profit any rats, this card's crazy good.
Well, you're not profiting rats.
I sometimes do.
I don't know when you profit rats except for when we're playing Star or something. And so it's like mostly, hey, do you want to wait 2 turns and have him pay 2 mana to do nothing? And then after that, he gets a 3/3 in the air that if he has additional creatures, he can sacrifice to draw cards. And I wouldn't be playing that because that's too slow. And I don't like giving my opponents things, especially since it's 2 mana. Have your opponent
Such a low
say,
investment.
yeah, you know what? I don't feel like you should get anything, and then you don't get anything.
Look, you pair. There's so many cards that you can pair this with that make it really, really good.
Well, you don't have them.
Like, and they're very simple. Like Suture Priest, I'm in. Blind Obedience, I'm in. Authority of the Consuls, sounds great. Massacre Worm, Assault Intercessor, literally anything. Taunt from the Rampart, if you have like a million mana laying around. I just think Rat Jam is just a single tiny effect away from making it great, and the only way to take it down is to launch a smear campaign.
So it's not a good card.
It's
you
great.
need other cards to make it
has
better.
Been solid with me. No, even if I'm saying if you have any of those other cards I mentioned and things go terribly for you with the rat on the rat front, you're still happy.
So you're telling me that this 2 mana investment is only good if you have
No.
Massacre Worm,
The
Assault
worst case
Intercessor.
scenario is still good if you have any of those cards. And
okay,
I'm happy with.
Say you don't. Say you play it turn 2.
I'm happy with jebaiting everybody into an arch enemy situation
It's
over
not.
this 2-drop.
It's not an art. I
That's
know
what it
you're
feels
trying to
like.
make yourself feel better, but in general, it's just, hey, do you want me to have creatures? I don't either. Let's swing these into each other.
Here's the
Okay.
flow chart. Break out the flow chart.
It's, do you want BZ to have fun with these rats? No? Okay, let's kill them. Okay. And that's it, really.
I'm a believer in Rat Jam, and I'm not a believer in our next card, which is Dragon Master Outcast, which I've almost never seen do anything ever. It is red for 1/1 at the beginning of your upkeep. If you have 6 or more lands, create a 5/5 red dragon. Now, I think I've been pretty fair about my opinions. I'm not trying to hyperbolize too much, where I go like, hey, I see that you're making treasure tokens in, this treasure deck. I just don't think Quicksmith Genius is a good enough, it gives you enough rummage as a turn. I think Dragon Master Outcast is horrible.
Yeah, I think that I haven't had the best luck with it, and I might get rid of it. I am kind of hopeful because it's just a 1-drop, and it just says, if you play the game and it survives, it will make you stuff. Maybe that's just a hopeful, dream I have.
I think
But then
the
again,
hope never ends up coming to fruition.
Yeah, I also haven't drawn this card that much. I feel like you don't see this card that much because it also is not on the field that often.
This guy's skating by in all your decks because you haven't
all of my decks,
you haven't even drawn it.
I think he's in 1.
That's too many.
I think he's just in Bailoff, which, by the way, I haven't edited Bailoff in about 10 months.
But you have edited it. And you have looked at the deck that contains Dragon Master Outcast and not cut Dragon Master Outcast.
That's fine.
I think it's like tying an anchor to yourself and jumping off a ship. you know?
I haven't looked at this since we filmed on the Command Zone, and that was probably in January.
That was a hot minute ago.
Yeah, so I don't really remember if that's the only deck that I have it in. However, I think it's only in there, and I haven't played that deck since then either.
I guess I'll throw out a PSA just in terms of actual deck building advice. I do think this card is almost good nowhere. If you want to know what I think about it, I would cut it from every deck I see it in, even Dragon decks, even Landfall decks. I just think it's not a good card.
I think that I haven't been the most impressed with it, but if you want to be hopeful, then try it out. Just like Moxfield.com, the best place online to build a deck, and you should try it out if you're ever going to look to build decks, because that is where we are, and you should follow us.
Talk about being impressed. I'm impressed with the 0 mana investment of Moxfield that I can pull up during a game, actually. This is not only acceptable, but I would approve of it. If you're tutoring and you're not exactly sure what to get, bring out your phone, go on Moxfield, scroll through your deck, super easy. Visual grid is the way you organize things. And it does help speed up the process without you having to thumb through everything. You just go, oh, I think I do want a board wipe. I'll get this one. And everyone's like, wow, thanks, Moxfield. You saved us a bunch of time.
I love using Moxfield for tutors. Go check it out and give us a follow.
What don't you love, though?
Thematic Compass. It's a card that BZ plays in more than a couple decks.
I played in 1 or 2, yeah.
2 mana for an artifact. If you pay 3 and tap it, you search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 7 or more lands, you transform it to add a land that taps for colorless, or you can tap it to untap target attacking creature an opponent controls and remove it from combat. I think that this is just the culmination of everything you hate, and so I don't get why you play it.
What do you mean, hate?
It's an artifact that does nothing when it comes down, and it also does nothing when you want to play it in the early game. paying 3 mana to look for a basic and not even put it out on the field is an awful rate. And
That I will say, that's an emergency for if you're going to miss a land drop, you get a land and you feel kind of bad about it. But it's not great.
That's an awful rate in general, and it doesn't even go onto the field. It's only a basic. It's not even your best land. And then if you can get it to 7 mana, you transform it, and it turns into not even a land that taps for color, or
It taps for mana.
the equivalent of a Maze of Ith
Heck yeah.
that you aren't playing anywhere to begin with. So I think that overall, these are a lot of little effects that you're not playing anywhere else. So I don't get why you're playing them all into one that is a do nothing until you have 7 or more lands.
I don't like that Maze of Ith can't tap for mana. That does bother me. This actually helps you find land drops if you're missing them or if you know you're going to need them for extra other reasons. I think I have some complaints about it. I don't think this card's perfect. I really wish it transformed on 6 lands because 7 sometimes doesn't get you the most use, right? Like, I would like to untap with this as a land, at least 3 times in a game. And when you need 7, if you do miss land drops for some reason, which I will say is harder when you have a Journeyer's Kite on the front side. Not that Journeyer's Kite's a good card, but it's stapled on to what I consider a mid to late game Farseek that goes and finds Maze of Ith.
A mid to late game Farseek.
That goes and finds Maze of Ith, which is a good land to have in play if you don't have to go through any of the downside of Maze of Ith, which is giving up a land drop and not tapping for mana.
This is a 2 mana do nothing until you have 7 lands
a
out.
Low investment.
Unless you can pay 3, and if you're missing the 3rd land drop to begin with,
we're not missing the 3rd land drop. Give me something.
I have watched you miss the 3rd land drop in at least 30% of the last games you've played.
With this card, though?
Not with this card in general. I'm just saying if you're hurting for lands, 3 mana I feel like is a tough spot to get because usually when you're missing lands,
like the bare that's like
I
the
don't know.
minimum.
I feel like if you're keeping a hand and you're greedy like Beezy, you say, "Oh, a 2-lander, that's pretty nice."
I do keep 2-landers, but I also draw my 3rd land.
And then if you're having trouble getting to the 3rd land, which you are trying to get anyways, this is a do nothing because then you put it down and go, okay, and then you're waiting for that 3rd land still. And then it taunts you by saying at the beginning of your end, maybe you have 7 or more, but you have 2. And then it turns around, and I don't think you're getting that effect that often.
Missing land drops is objectively less likely when you have Thematic Compass in play. 100%.
If you can get the statement. 3 mana.
No, because if you're missing them otherwise, it's the same. But if you have this out and you have 3 or more and you're missing land drops, and you can actually go get the land if it's that important to you to give up playing a different 3-drop or something, to go find your 4th land and then even find your 5th land and start actually playing the game. This has dug me out of a few holes. It's not the main mode. I think mainly I play this. It sits there for a little bit. And then on turn 6, I get a Maze of It that also taps for mana.
You don't like waiting for things, so I don't get why you like this card. And also,
it's a low investment.
I would rather play card draw or anything, even card rummaging to get to those lands instead of something that says, okay, now I'll wait.
But what about Maze of Ith on the
I don't play Maze of Ith anywhere, and so because of that, I think that every box of this card is unchecked for me.
I think the text box of Maze of Ith is really good, and this does, and Maze of Ith and this card have very real political effects on the game, virtually forcing creatures to attack elsewhere or at least guaranteeing they won't come at you. And even if somebody calls your bluff, you go, okay, do the thing, remove it, and I don't take the damage. So I do like the effect it has, and I'm not really at the point where I want to play Maze of It. So this is like my middle ground, and it has some extra bonus of maybe I'll hit my land drop. But I don't want to defend myself forever. If you want to get one last hit in, and then I'll go to the next card that I have.
I think this card is rough, dude. If you're playing this, then why are you waiting for so long? Just tutor Maze of Ith or something if you really want to.
All right, my next card, we got a Planeswalker. Tezzeret, Artifice Master. 3 blue for 5 loyalty. Planeswalker, he +1 to make a Thopter. 0s to draw a card, or if you have 3 artifacts, you draw 2 cards. And -9, who really cares, but just to read it. You get an emblem with at the beginning of your end step. Search for a permanent, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. I am surprised at how much you hate Planeswalkers and that you're also playing this one, because I don't think this card is... I think this is in the middle of the pack tier where it feels like Ob Nixilis, where you 0 it to draw 1 or 2 and then it dies.
Yeah, I think that with this card, it does a little bit of the things that I wanted to, where it's it can protect itself if I want creatures, because it makes a creature. I'm not usually playing it for its -9. It's nice if that happens.
On there, yeah.
But I also do have a little bit of I play this in my Door to Nothingness deck, which has a little bit of everything in terms of copying triggers. It also has a little bit of proliferation, which is why I'm a little bit more apt to play Planeswalkers in there. And then I have a lot of artifacts in there, so it's usually draw 2 cards or create something that will let me draw cards later. I feel like this isn't really threatening enough where people want to attack it for the most part. I think that in general, it's nice to have the card draw, but if it does get attacked, I can usually block something or at least deter people to go elsewhere. I also have a few things that really profit off Thopters / artifact creature tokens. I have like the Whirler Rogue types, and then I also have, one of the improvised cards. I think that this, even though it's 5 mana, that deck is slower to begin with, and I try to take my way to like turns 10, 12, because it's a door to nothingness deck. I'm going slow.
Here's where I'm at. I will even amend my initial statement. Not only do I think you should take out Tezzeret, Artifice Master, but that's the only Planeswalker you play in that deck, right?
Yeah,
I think you just got the wrong Tezzeret.
I might have actually put the wrong Tezzeret.
Put Tezzeret. No. I mean, you've played this card knowing that it's not Tezzeret the Seeker, so there's no quick escape. You got to throw Tezzeret the Seeker in, because not only can that untap, it pluses to 5, I believe, if you plus 1 it to like ramp a little bit, so maybe you play protection for it. But once it's at 5, you can go find the door. It literally finds door, and if you're just gonna play it for value, you can just -1 it to go get Soul Ring.
I'm not. Do I play Soul Ring in that deck?
Probably.
I might have taken Soul Ring out of
or
that deck.
-2 it to go find Arcane Signal.
Yeah,
you definitely play.
I had that in at one point, actually. I had that Tezzeret in.
I think he's way better than this Tezzeret for sure.
I think
this Tezzeret is a little
think my deal was I needed card draw, and I needed artifact base card draw, and then there were also points where I played this on Shuffle Scuffle once, and they made me take out some stuff, just letting you know. I had Rhystic Study in here at one point, and then that also was...
Do you mean Command Zone?
No.
Oh, Shuffle Scuffle.
I meant Shuffle
That's
Scuffle.
an unaired episode.
That's an unaired episode, and they made me take out a bunch of stuff, including Rhystic Study.
Oh, yeah, we did make you take out Rhystic Study when you were playing.
And so I was looking for a card draw that's slower and artifact theme, and this guy came up, and I went, yeah, you know what, that's fine.
Hey, you know what, that's on you. That's on you, and now you're losing a point in this made-up game that we have.
I don't think so.
Next up, what do we got?
We have Meteor Golem, 7 mana for a 3/3. When it enters, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Who's paying 7 mana for this? I understand if you have very, very consistent artifact reducing qualities in this, where it's like 2 or 3 mana, but I think that this is such a pre-con level card. I think of this with Myriad Landscape and Vindicate and a bunch of stuff where it's single target removal, and if maybe you can blink it, it's okay, but if you don't care about just blinking it or reducing the cost, that this is so mid.
I think this card's pretty okay. It's not the best card in the world, and you do want to be playing artifacts or blink. Possibly you can use it as a lower level like reanimation target if you're doing like Trash for Treasure or something. But I have it mostly in decks where I'm on a budget a little bit. I want to blink and I want artifacts, and I probably have like Foundry Inspector and maybe like Scrap Trawler, so that when I'm sacrificing Meteor Golem, I get like a pretty sizable trigger off of it. So don't play this card without synergy, because 7 mana to destroy a thing, even if you're in mono red and you want to hit enchantments, totally not worth it. If you've got the build arounds, though, I think this is a decent card. I'm not going to say it's not expensive, but I think once you can do it twice, pretty happy about it.
I don't know. I think as a reanimation target, or you're cheating the cost, it's fine. But just 7 mana, destroy target thing and opponent controls. I think that's such a bad rate. I don't really want to be playing, when I think of how many targets, like I'm hesitant to pay 3 mana to destroy a single target. So I think at 7, even if I can maybe blink it once, it's still double the amount where I'm like really happy to play it. I think if you could get at least 2 blinks off of this, then it's fine and you're getting your mana's worth.
Okay. A quick one there. I don't have a lot more to say about Meteor Golem, but I think Meteor Golem is not bad. I think Meteor Golem's got some fans out there. Hopefully they'll join me up. All right, next one is the card with the most text on it. Not close. This is our boy Vorinclex. No last name given. 3 green for a 6/6 trample reach. When he enters, search for 2 forests, put them into your hand, and then you can pay 6 green and exile him, and then return him to the battlefield transformed as a saga. Chapter 1, mill 10. Put 2 creatures from among those milled onto the battlefield. 2, distribute 7 counters among creatures you control. And 3 is creatures you control gain 1:. This creature fights something, then you exile it and transform it. So it's going to get Vorinclex again, which will give you 2 more forests to your hand. They don't have to be basics. I don't think this is the worst card. I have it in the Commander Cube, where it is like a beefy boy. I think this is more of a mid-power card, though. And the deck you have it in is Selvala, and it's not just like a random Selvala. It's like this has Staff of Domination, Umbral Mantle, all of the like cheap Tamiyo's safekeeping ways to protect it so that you can like combo off. And I think if you can combo, Vorinclex probably just shouldn't be in your deck.
I think Vorinclex is so cool.
I agree with you. He's cool.
I mean, I also think that I have a lot of cards in here where searching, like thinning out your deck for Forest is okay, especially if you could cast this turn like 3 or something, where I can usually cast this about turn 3.
I don't know.
Thinning out your deck and then also being able to exile and return it to get 2 gigantic things from my graveyard after milling 10 cards. That is more mana than I'm usually paying into this. And then also distributing a bunch of stuff. I have a lot of like haste enablers, so being able to throw that down means that I can usually win through combat damage. I'm not always trying to combo. Sometimes Selvala gets removed and stuff, so this is also a good way. So if I get her removed a few times, I still have kind of like a mid-game plan.
I mean, it's also a mana outlet if you have no other better payoff, and you can make, I mean, Selvala will make at least 6 with him, so you can transform him pretty easily, and you could potentially do it the turn you play him if you've got other stuff. So I acknowledge there's definitely like stuff going on. I don't think it's good enough when your plan A is combo off on turn 4 to have like 5-mana 6/6 guy. I will also say this is more of a general statement and not really about Vorinclex specifically, but I don't think deck thinning is really an argument in terms of 100-card singleton decks. I know that in 40-card limited decks, deck thinning out one of your 17 lands is like not statistically relevant at all. So I can't imagine that thinning out 2 forests is relevant to like say that now I'm going to draw that much more spells out of my deck off of just 2 forests.
I don't know. Just it feels really good to be able to slam this down on like turn 3 and then also on turn 4 or something, be able to flip him and then get 2 giant Eldrazi. I have done that at least a few times. And
what's turn 3? You go like Llanowar Elves.
I like Phyrexian Soulgorger and stuff.
Selvala turn 2. And then so turn 3 you have 4 lands and you play Phyrexian Soulgorger and ramp out Vorinclex.
Yeah.
I guess I'd just rather ramp out something else at that point.
I guess. I mean,
it's not bad.
Yeah, I think he has done work. Maybe he will be changed. However, he's done work from what I've seen. He's very fun to play. I think it's very splashy. And
I love all these Praetors.
I enjoy this card.
I have them all 5 in the commander cube because I love the art treatment, and I think they're all pretty like meaty cards. They all can definitely do stuff. So I'm curious what you guys think. Let us know. Make a list of the 16 we mentioned. Let us know who wins each card, or just give us a summation of like who do you think made better points that has better cards overall. And then we'll see you in the next video. But we've got another disagreement actually from way back, like a year ago, right?
Yes.